William will quite rightly stare down claims that Meghan Markle is threatening to sue.
Members of the UK Parliament have taken a stand beside Meghan Markle, so let's take a quick listen to Holly Lynch, a member of the UK.
The prince has made an unprecedented jaw-dropping move to silence the rising power of his sister-in-law. This isn't just another headline, it's a seismic shift in the royal landscape, one that has everyone talking behind closed doors and across the tabloids. Tension is growing at an explosive rate around Meghan's latest project, a bold, headline-grabbing venture that's reshaping and some argue even damaging what it truly means to belong to the royal empire. So how exactly is the Duchess of Sussex's new business causing nationwide shock waves, rattling royal traditions, and twisting the monarchy's public image? What ripple effects could Prince William's furious no-holds-barred decision unleash across the kingdom and the international stage? Join us as we lift the veil on the untold events that unfolded behind the scenes of this blockbuster-style royal drama, exposing family bonds that many insist don't even need fixing. The silence inside the palace isn't peaceful anymore. It's thick, heavy, the kind of quiet that hums with tension so loud you can almost hear it echoing down marble corridors. This isn't just another royal disagreement brushed aside with polite smiles and carefully worded statements. This feels different, personal, calculated, final. Behind those guarded gates, something has shifted. A line has been drawn, not in public, not with fanfare, but with cold precision. And at the center of it all stands a future king who has decided that mercy has gone too far. For years, the monarchy survived on compromise, soft conversations, private apologies, tea-table diplomacy meant to smooth over cracks before the public ever noticed them. That approach belonged to the old way of thinking. The way of a father who believed blood should always outweigh bruised pride, who thought every fracture could be healed if you just listened long enough. But that patience has been wearing thin, watching, waiting, observing how titles were worn like accessories instead of responsibilities. How duty slowly became optional, while privilege remained untouched. And every time the system bent, it weakened just a little more. What began as concern hardened into frustration, and frustration turned into resolve. This wasn't about anger exploding in the moment. This was strategic, measured, ruthlessly planned. While others talked about unity, he studied history. While some hoped the noise would die down, he mapped out consequences. He watched how other royal houses survived the modern world by doing something radical, enforcing boundaries. To him, royalty was never meant to be flexible branding. It was structure, discipline, service. Without that, the crown became a costume anyone could wear while chasing applause elsewhere. And then came the breaking point, because there is nothing more dangerous to an ancient institution than blurred lines. When people can step away from duty but still cash in on the name, the system starts to rot from within. Influence without responsibility, fame without service, power without accountability. That imbalance became impossible to ignore. While public faith wavered, one man decided that preserving the monarchy mattered more than keeping everyone comfortable. He wasn't waiting for a coronation to act. He wasn't waiting for permission. He moved quietly, assembling minds sharper than palace courtiers. Experts who didn't care about sentiment, only survival. The question guiding them was simple and brutal: who is royal and who is merely related? Under this new vision, there would be no gray area. You serve or you don't, you commit fully or you step aside. Titles would no longer float freely, untethered from obligation. They would mean something again, or they would be removed. That clarity sent shockwaves far beyond palace walls. Because for one duchess, everything rested on that single word, royal. Her influence, her credibility, her access, her empire wasn't built on anonymity or talent alone. It was built on proximity to the crown, on the glow of association, on introductions that opened doors before she ever spoke. Strip away that glow, and what remained? This wasn't theoretical. This was existential. As the framework solidified, anxiety spread through her inner circle. Every appearance, every collaboration, every carefully curated moment leaned heavily on that title. Without it, she risked becoming just another celebrity voice in a crowded room. And she knew it. While London worked on enforcement, her team worked on defense, contingencies, safeguards, a last attempt to lock down relevance before the ground shifted completely. The plan was bold. Commercialize the title. Own it. Protect it. If the institution wouldn't validate it, the market would. But the palace had already anticipated that move. Protocols older than any media empire stood in the way. Titles were not commodities. They could not be bought, sold, or trademarked like lifestyle brands. The door closed before the paperwork could breathe. That was the moment it became clear. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a purge of ambiguity. The future king didn't see collateral damage. He saw necessary correction. In his mind, the monarchy had survived for centuries because it knew when to adapt and when to stand firm. And now was the moment to stand firm. Those who stepped away for personal gain would not be chased. They would not be punished publicly. They would simply be reclassified, reduced to what they actually were. Family, yes. Royals, no. Heirs, seals, archives, decisions delivered without reply. Final, absolute, recorded for history. Not debated on talk shows. It was old power wielded in a modern way. And the implications were devastating. Media clout doesn't survive on nostalgia alone. Influence thrives on perception. When doors stop opening, when introductions lose their sparkle, when the title no longer carries weight, everything changes. Quietly, at first. Then all at once. Rooms grow colder. Invitations dry up. The difference between being tolerated and being revered becomes painfully obvious. For him, none of that mattered. His focus wasn't on individual fallout. It was on restoring something he believed had been slipping away for too long. Authority. Exclusivity, meaning a crown that commanded respect, not commentary. He wasn't driven by spite. He was driven by fear of irrelevance. Fear that if the monarchy became everything to everyone, it would become nothing at all. History backed him up. Other royal houses had already walked this path. They survived not by clinging to sentiment, but by enforcing purpose. Titles were reserved for those who worked. Those who didn't were gently, firmly let go, and the institution endured. Watching from afar, both sides understood what was at stake. This wasn't a family spat. This was a battle for relevance. One side fought for the future of the crown. The other fought for the survival of a personal brand. There were no villains in his calculation, only roles. And roles once defined could not be ignored. The monarchy would move forward leaner, harder, less forgiving. And those who once orbited its power without anchoring themselves to duty would feel the distance grow, slowly. Then suddenly, and as the dust settled, one truth remained impossible to deny. The crown does not chase those who walk away. It waits, it watches. And when the moment comes, it reminds the world that royalty is not a lifestyle choice. It is a commitment. And commitment, once broken, comes with consequences. And once that realization sinks in, it doesn't arrive gently. It lands like a slow-burning ache. The kind that tightens the chest when the cameras are gone and the applause fades, because relevance, real relevance, isn't loud when it leaves. It just quietly stops answering your calls. Inside that world, the shift was already happening. Subtle at first, a pause before emails will return, a delay in confirmations. That unmistakable hesitation when powerful rooms started asking not who she was, but why she mattered now. Titles have a way of doing that. When they lose weight, the silence around them grows heavier. Every public move began to feel calculated. Every appearance carried pressure, because without the full force of the crown behind it, the spotlight became harsher, less forgiving. Celebrity alone is fickle. It demands constant novelty, constant noise. Royalty, on the other hand, survives on restraint and mystique. And once that mystique thins, it doesn't come back easily. What stung most wasn't just the institutional block. It was the indifference. The realization that the palace wasn't reacting emotionally at all. There were no dramatic rebuttals, no public condemnations, no drawn-out spectacle, just procedure, ink, files, archives. The cold efficiency of an institution that had decided it would not be bent again. And that kind of power is terrifying because it doesn't argue. Behind the scenes, advisors whispered reassurances, but even they could feel the ground shifting. They understood how influence really works. It's not about headlines. It's about access. And access is controlled by perception. Once the perception changes, the latter quietly disappears. Meanwhile, the future king remained unmoved. He wasn't monitoring reactions. He wasn't scanning tabloids. His concern wasn't popularity. It was precedent. If one person could leverage the royal name without service, then others would follow. And soon the crown would mean nothing more than a famous surname. That was unacceptable. So the framework stood firm, unapologetic. Titles tethered to duty. Privileges tied to service. No exceptions carved out for star power or public sympathy. In his world, emotion did not outweigh structure. And structure, once enforced, stabilized everything. What many failed to grasp was how deeply this decision was rooted in fear, not of individuals, but of erosion. The slow erosion of authority that happens when boundaries are ignored long enough. He wasn't trying to rewrite history, he was trying to preserve it, and preservation often looks cruel to those standing outside the walls. As weeks passed, the contrast became sharper. Working royals moved with quiet confidence, their roles clear, their presence unquestioned. Others hovered at the edges of relevance, trying to remind the world of who they once were. Rather than what they currently represented, that distinction mattered more than ever. There's a particular kind of humiliation that comes not from rejection, but from demotion. From realizing you haven't been cast out loudly, but reduced silently. Still acknowledged, but no longer centered. Still titled, but stripped of gravity. That's when the emotional cost truly sets in. Because power doesn't vanish overnight. It leaks. Slowly. And every leak reminds you of what you used to have. For the monarchy, this tightening of ranks brought relief. A sense of direction. A clarity that had been missing for years. For those who thrived on proximity rather than participation, it brought panic. And panic makes people loud. But loudness only accelerated the separation. The institution didn't respond. It didn't need to. Silence became its strongest weapon. Decisions were already made, lines already drawn, history already recorded, and perhaps that was the most brutal part of it all. There was no dramatic confrontation, no emotional showdown, just the unmistakable message that the crown would continue, with or without anyone who chose not to serve it. In private moments, one can imagine the weight of that realization settling in, the understanding that independence comes at a cost. That freedom from duty also means freedom from protection, from prestige, from automatic relevance. And once that trade is made, there is no undo button. The future king understood something others learned too late. Institutions don't bend forever. Eventually, they snap back, harder, cleaner, more controlled than before. And when they do, they don't ask who gets hurt along the way. They simply survive. As the dust continues to settle, one truth grows clearer by the day. This wasn't about punishing anyone. It was about redefining what it means to belong. To be royal not by name, but by action. Not by marriage, but by commitment. Those willing to give everything would remain. Those who chose another path would be respected but released. And that release, quiet as it was, changed everything. Because once the crown decides you are no longer essential, no amount of branding can make you so again.